The breaking point. The Galactic Council chamber had never felt so cold. Admiral Serena Voss of the Concordat Defense Force stood before the emergency session, her holographic form flickering slightly as she delivered the news no one wanted to hear. The swarm was winning. The Helios defense line has fallen, she reported, her voice steady despite the weight of the words. 32 systems lost in the past solar cycle. Our remaining forces are retreating to the Perseus Arm. The chamber erupted in worried murmurs. Representatives of 17 species shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their varied forms united in shared dread. The swarm had emerged from deep space 2 years ago, a hostile collective of biomechanical entities that consumed everything in their path. They didn't negotiate. They didn't communicate. They simply devoured. High Counselor Zakseth, his crystalline form pulsing with anxiety, raised a appendage. What of the Aegis Protocol? Surely our combined technological might. Failed, Serena interrupted, projecting tactical data into the chamber center. The swarm adapted to our defensive matrices within hours. They're learning, evolving. Each engagement makes them stronger. She paused, letting the implications sink in. At current projections, we have perhaps 3 months before they reach the core worlds. The chamber descended into chaos. Various counselors shouted proposals and accusations, their voices blending into a cacophony of fear. Serena waited, watching the political facade crumble in the face of extinction. Only Zakseth remained composed, his crystalline structure dimming thoughtfully. There might be another option, he said finally, his words cutting through the noise. The chamber fell silent. Though some might consider it desperate. Serena's eyes narrowed. Counselor, we've been monitoring a species on the galaxy's outer rim. They call themselves humans. Zakseth projected a new hologram, a small blue-green world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. They've achieved faster-than-light travel recently, but have chosen isolation, maintaining only minimal contact with our trade outposts. Primitives. Someone scoffed. How could they possibly? They're not what they appear, Zakseth continued. Our long-range observations have detected anomalies, energy signatures we can't explain, vessels that appear and disappear at will. They're hiding something. Serena studied the projection of Earth, her tactical mind already working. You think they could help? Why would they? They show no interest in galactic affairs. Because, Zakseth's form pulsed brighter. They've been watching us. Watching the swarm. Our deep space sensors have detected their stealth observers at every major engagement. They know what's coming. The chamber erupted again, but Serena barely heard them. She was focused on a small detail in the tactical display, a subtle distortion near one of their recent battles. She dismissed it as sensor noise, but now, how do we contact them? She asked. We don't, Zakseth replied. They contact us. As if on cue, the chamber's communications array crackled to life. A new hologram appeared. A human woman in a simple dark uniform, her presence somehow filling the space, despite her species' smaller stature. This is Admiral Helena Chen of the United Earth Defense Force, she announced, her voice carrying an authority that silenced the chamber instantly. We've been monitoring the situation. We're prepared to offer assistance. Serena stepped forward, studying the human carefully. Just like that. You'll help. Helena's expression remained neutral, but there was something in her eyes, a contained intensity that made Serena's combat instincts tingle. The swarm represents a threat to all sentient life. We've been preparing for this possibility for decades. The only question is, are you prepared to see humanity as we truly are? The implied warning in those words hung heavy in the chamber. Serena glanced at the tactical display, showing the swarm's relentless advance, then back at Helena. We're prepared for anything that might save our civilization. A slight smile crossed Helena's face. No, Admiral Voss. You're not. But you will be. She turned to address the entire chamber. The United Earth Defense Force will arrive at the Perseus line in 48 hours. I suggest you clear our approach vectors. Things are about to get interesting. The hologram vanished, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Serena stared at the space where Helena had been, a mixture of hope and unease settling in her gut. They were about to discover what humanity had been hiding all these years. She just hoped they were ready for the answer. In the depths of space, undetected by even the Concordat's best sensors, a vast fleet of Earth vessels dropped their stealth fields. Thousands of ships, their dark hulls absorbing nearby starlight, began moving in perfect formation. Humanity was going to war, and the galaxy was about to learn why they had chosen isolation for so long. It wasn't fear that had kept them hidden. It was preparation. Silent thunder. The swarm detected the human fleet 8 minutes before its arrival at the Perseus line. Their biomechanical sensors registered an approaching mass of vessels, but something was wrong with the readings. The ships seemed to flicker in and out of reality, their energy signatures deliberately chaotic, defying conventional physics. In the command center of the Concordat's last defensive line, Admiral Serena Voss watched the tactical display with growing tension. The swarm's forward elements had already begun to shift, their hive mind adapting to this new threat. Massive bioships, each the size of a small moon, moved to intercept the human fleet's approach vector. Energy spike. Her sensor officer called out. The swarm is charging their primary weapons. Before Serena could respond, Admiral Helena Chen's voice came through the command channel, calm as still water. Maintain your position, Admiral Voss. You're about to witness humanity's first gift to the galaxy. The swarm fired first, their biological weapons unleashing streams of coherent energy that could tear through battleships like paper. But the human fleet didn't attempt to evade. Instead, their ships seemed to ripple. The devastating beams passed through them as if they weren't there. Quantum displacement drives, Helena explained, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. We learned long ago that the best armor isn't something you wear, it's somewhere you aren't. The human counterattack began without warning. Their ships moved in impossible patterns, each vessel perfectly coordinated with the others. They didn't fire traditional weapons. Instead, space itself seemed to fold around the swarm ships. Where their attacks landed, matter simply ceased to exist, carved away with surgical precision. Neural-linked fleet operations. Helena continued as her ships danced through the swarm's formations. Each vessel is an extension of its crew's consciousness. We don't fight ships. We become them. Serena watched in awe as the human fleet systematically dismantled the swarm's forward elements. The biomechanical entities tried to adapt, their collective intelligence analyzing and responding to each new tactic. But the humans were already switching strategies, their ships flowing like water around the swarm's counters. Your ships, Serena breathed. They're not just advanced. They're impossible. Not impossible, Admiral. Just unbound. Humanity spent centuries knowing we weren't alone in the universe. We knew first contact was inevitable, but we also knew that not every meeting would be peaceful. Helena's voice hardened slightly. So we pushed the boundaries of physics. We merged consciousness with technology. We made the impossible our baseline. The battle continued to unfold, but it wasn't really a battle anymore. It was a demonstration. The swarm, for the first time since its emergence, was being hunted. Their attempts to adapt were met with counters that seemed prepared years in advance. Their biological advantages were turned against them by weapons that ignored conventional matter. They're retreating, Serena's tactical officer announced, disbelief evident in their voice. The swarm is actually retreating. But Helena's response was grim. No, they're not. This was just the vanguard. The main hive felt our attack. Now they know we're a threat. Her hologram appeared on Serena's command deck, expression severe. They'll be back, and in far greater numbers. This was just the opening move. Then why not press the advantage? Serena demanded. Your technology clearly surpasses theirs. We cold. Because victory isn't just about winning battles, Admiral Voss. It's about winning wars. Helena's eyes met Serena's. The swarm operates on pure biological imperatives. They consume, adapt, and overcome. But we just showed them something they've never encountered. An enemy they can't simply evolve to defeat. Their entire strategy will have to change. And when they do, that's when the real fight begins. Helena's hologram smiled, but there was no warmth in it. What you've seen today isn't humanity's greatest achievement, Admiral. It's just the first layer of what we've become. The swarm thinks they've learned what humanity is capable of. They're wrong. They've only seen what we wanted them to see. As if to emphasize her words, the human fleet began to vanish, their ships fading from both visual and sensor detection, as if they'd never existed. Only Helena's hologram remained, her presence a reminder of the power that had revealed itself. "We'll be back when the main hive arrives," she said. "In the meantime, I suggest your scientists study the data from this encounter. You'll want to understand what's coming. Because the galaxy is about to change, Admiral Voss, and humanity isn't just going to participate in that change." Her hologram flickered once. "We're going to direct it." As Helena's image faded, Serena stared at the now empty battlefield. The swarm had been driven back, yes, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this victory was just the prelude to something far more momentous. Humanity had hidden itself away for centuries, preparing for this moment. She just hoped the galaxy was ready for what they'd become. The counterstrike. Deep in the void between the Perseus and Orion arms, the swarm gathered. Thousands of bioships merged into vast living structures, sharing genetic information, adapting, evolving. At their center, the main hive pulsed with malevolent intelligence. For the first time in its existence, it had encountered a species that didn't just fight back. They had predicted its actions. The hive could taste something new in its collective consciousness: uncertainty. In the Concordat Command Center, Admiral Serena Voss studied the long-range sensor data with growing concern. "They're combining their ships," she reported to the holographic assembly of human and alien leaders, "creating something new." Admiral Helena Chen nodded, her projection showing none of the worry that marked the other commanders' faces. As expected, the swarm operates on principles of accelerated evolution. When standard adaptation fails, they resort to radical mutation. "You don't seem concerned," High Counselor Zach Seth observed, his crystalline form pulsing with anxiety. "Because we've been waiting for this." Helena gestured, and a new hologram appeared, detailed scans of the swarm's transformation. "They're developing what you might call a superweapon, a living ship capable of manipulating space-time at a quantum level. They think they've discovered the basis of our technology." Serena leaned forward. "Haven't they?" "No." Helena's smile was cold. "They've discovered what we wanted them to find. The quantum displacement tech we showed them was real, but it was also a lure. Sometimes the best way to defeat an adaptive enemy is to guide their evolution in the wrong direction." Before anyone could respond, proximity alarms blared throughout the command center. The swarm had moved, crossing light years in seconds. At their head was a massive construct that defied description. A writhing mass of biomechanical matter that seemed to bend reality around it. "By the void," someone whispered. "What have they become?" The swarm's new flagship fired, its weapon turning space itself into a weapon. Entire sectors of the defensive line began to fold in on themselves, ships and stations crushed by distorted gravity. But Helena remained unmoved. "And now," she said quietly, "they learned why humanity spent centuries in isolation." The human fleet appeared without warning, emerging from what looked like tears in reality itself. But these ships were different from before. Gone were the sleek technological marvels of the first battle. These vessels seemed to pulse with internal light, their hulls flowing like liquid metal. "The swarm adapted to fight what they thought we were," Helena explained as her fleet took position. But humanity didn't just advance our technology during our isolation. We evolved ourselves. The swarm flagship fired again, its reality warping beam heading straight for the human lines. But instead of avoiding it, the human ships absorbed it. Their fluid hulls rippled, channeling the energy through their structures. Biomechanical evolution was their specialty, Helena continued. But we mastered it centuries ago. Then we moved beyond it. Our ships aren't just machines we control with our minds. They're extensions of what humanity has become, a fusion of organic consciousness and quantum engineering that transcends traditional physics. The human counterattack began. Their ships didn't fire weapons. They simply reached out with tendrils of pure energy, touching the swarm vessels. Where they made contact, the swarm's bioships began to change, their corrupted evolution reversing, their structures breaking down at a fundamental level. You see, Helena's voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. While they were learning to manipulate space, we were learning to manipulate life itself. Every adaptation they make carries our influence. Every evolution follows our design. They thought they were becoming stronger, but they were actually becoming more vulnerable to our true capabilities. The swarm's flagship thrashed in space, its reality warping powers useless against an enemy that could rewrite the rules of biology itself. The massive construct began to disintegrate, its component ships trying desperately to separate before the cascade of forced evolution could reach them. But it was too late. The human ships had surrounded the swarm fleet, their fluid forms creating a living barrier that pulsed with otherworldly energy. The few swarm ships that managed to break away found themselves pulled back by forces they couldn't comprehend. "This isn't just a battle," Helena announced to the stunned observers. "This is reclamation." The swarm thought they could consume and adapt their way across the galaxy. Instead, they've become part of humanity's grand experiment in directed evolution. As if to emphasize her words, the remaining swarm ships began to transform. Their aggressive biomechanical structures smoothed out, becoming something new, something that resonated with the same strange energy that powered the human fleet. What are you doing to them?" Serena asked, unable to look away from the transformation. "Showing them a better path," Helena replied. "The swarm's greatest strength was their ability to adapt and evolve. We're not destroying that strength, we're redirecting it. They wanted to consume the galaxy. Instead, they'll help us protect it." The battle ended not with destruction, but with transformation. Where the swarm's mighty fleet had been, a new force now floated in space, ships that were neither fully human nor fully swarm, but something entirely new. But in the distance, more swarm ships were gathering. The main hive had witnessed its vanguard's transformation, and it was already adapting, preparing new defenses against this unprecedented threat. The real war was just beginning. Shadow Games. The main hive of the swarm churned with activity, its vast consciousness wrestling with concepts it had never needed to consider before: fear, doubt, and something approaching awe. Through its distributed neural network, information flowed about the transformed Vanguard fleet, former swarm vessels now pulsing with human energy signatures. But more disturbing were the gaps in its knowledge, the inexplicable holes in its collective memory. Admiral Serena Voss stood on the observation deck of the Concordat flagship, watching the transformed ships patrol the defensive line. Their fluid forms rippled with internal light, a constant reminder of humanity's impossible technological leap. "They're beautiful, aren't they?" Admiral Helena Chen's voice came from behind her. The human commander had finally arrived in person, her physical presence somehow more imposing than her hologram had been. "Beautiful and terrifying," Serena replied without turning. "Like everything else humanity has shown us." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "The Galactic Council is concerned about our power to transform the swarm." Helena moved to stand beside her, watching the patrol. "About what else you might be capable of. About what other secrets Earth might be keeping." Serena turned to face her human counterpart. "Some are suggesting that you're as much a threat as the swarm." Helena's smile was slight but genuine. They're right to be concerned, but they're asking the wrong questions. She gestured to the transformed ships. What you see out there isn't just technology or evolution. It's philosophy made manifest. Before Serena could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. The main tactical display lit up with thousands of new contacts. The swarm's main fleet had arrived, led by multiple flagship-class vessels, each one a twisted reflection of the quantum engineering they'd witnessed before. They've adapted again, Serena noted, studying the readings. These ships, they're designed to be immune to your transformation technique. No, Helena corrected, her voice carrying an odd note of satisfaction. They're designed to be immune to what they think our transformation technique is. The swarm's greatest weakness isn't their biology or their technology. It's their predictability. They see, they adapt, they overcome, but they never ask why their enemy showed them what they showed them. The swarm fleet advanced, their new flagships distorting space in ways that made reality itself scream. But instead of mounting a defense, the human fleet began to fall back, their transformed swarm allies following suit. "You're retreating?" Serena demanded. "We're implementing the next phase." Helena's eyes never left the tactical display. "Tell me, Admiral Voss, why do you think humanity chose isolation for so long?" "To develop your technology, to prepare for threats like the swarm." "Partially. But mainly, we needed time to understand the fundamental nature of consciousness itself." Helena's voice took on a lecturer's tone. "The swarm operates on collective intelligence, many minds working as one. We studied that concept, refined it, and then transcended it. Our ships don't just share information, they share reality itself." As if on cue, the human fleet began to move in impossible ways. Ships appeared to be in multiple places at once, their quantum signatures overlapping and interweaving. The transformed swarm vessels joined them, adding to the chaos of conflicting sensor readings. The main swarm fleet faltered, their perfect formation showing signs of confusion. Their flagships fired their reality-warping weapons, but they couldn't seem to find valid targets among the quantum chaos before them. "You see," Helena continued, "while the swarm was adapting to our apparent technology, we were reshaping the very fabric of space-time around them. Every battle, every interaction, has been part of a greater pattern. We weren't just fighting them. We were teaching them a new way to perceive reality itself." The human fleet's movements became even more bizarre, ships seemingly phasing in and out of existence, splitting into multiple copies, merging back together. The transformed swarm vessels added to the effect, their fluid forms creating patterns that seemed to hypnotize their former brethren. "Their consciousness is networked," Helena explained as the main swarm fleet began to show signs of distress, "which means they share not just information, but understanding. Or in this case, confusion. We're not attacking their ships, Admiral Voss. We're attacking their ability to comprehend what they're seeing." Serena watched in amazement as the mighty swarm fleet began to lose coherence. Their perfect formations dissolved into chaos as their collective intelligence struggled to process the impossible sensor data flooding their neural networks. "This was your plan all along," she realized. "Every capability you showed them, every adaptation you encourage, was designed to lead them here, yes?" Helena nodded. "To a point where their own evolutionary advantages would become their greatest weakness. Their shared consciousness is experiencing a collective crisis of reality. They can no longer trust their own perceptions." The swarm flagships, massive as they were, began to drift aimlessly, their reality-warping weapons silent. The smaller ships broke formation entirely, their movements becoming erratic and uncoordinated. But Helena's expression remained grave. "This isn't victory, though. This is just preparation." "Preparation for what?" "For the true test." Helena's eyes hardened. "The swarm's main hive is watching, learning. And what we've done here will force it to make a choice, evolve in a way we can't predict, or—" She left the sentence unfinished, but Serena understood. The galaxy was about to witness either the swarm's ultimate adaptation or humanity's final revelation. The shadow game was reaching its end. The only question was, who was really playing whom? Dawn of a new era. The main hive of the swarm made its decision in a moment that would reshape galactic history. Confronted with the breakdown of its fleet's collective consciousness, it chose the path that had served it for millennia: evolution. But this time, it evolved in a way that even humanity hadn't predicted. The hive itself began to move. Admiral Serena Voss felt it before the sensors detected it, a disturbance in space-time that made reality shudder. The main hive, a biological construct the size of a small star system, was tearing its way through subspace toward the battlefield. "By the void," she whispered, watching the tactical display. "They're bringing their entire consciousness to bear." Admiral Helena Chen stood calmly at the command center, her expression unreadable as she studied the approaching monstrosity. "So they've chosen transcendence after all." She paused, then added softly, "Perfect." A hive emerged into normal space like a nightmare given form. It was no longer simply a collection of bioships. It had become something else, something that defied conventional physics. Its surface rippled with quantum distortions, each pulse sending waves of possibility through reality itself. "They've done what we couldn't force them to do," Helena explained, her voice carrying a note of satisfaction. "They've evolved beyond mere biological or technological advancement. They've become a living quantum entity." The transformed swarm ships that had been fighting alongside humanity began to resonate with the hive's presence, their fluid forms becoming more agitated. The human fleet's quantum projections flickered as reality itself became unstable around them. "You planned for this?" Serena asked, gripping her command console as space buckled around them. "We planned for possibility," Helena corrected. "Humanity spent centuries understanding not just what we could become, but what we should become. The swarm's arrival gave us the perfect opportunity to share that understanding." The hive's first attack wasn't physical, it was conceptual. Reality itself began to unravel as the vast entity imposed its new consciousness on the fabric of space-time. Ships from all sides began to phase in and out of existence as multiple quantum states tried to exist simultaneously. But instead of fighting this effect, the human fleet embraced it. Their ships began to pulse with a new kind of energy, one that somehow stabilized the chaos around them. The transformed swarm vessels followed suit, their forms synchronizing with the human ship's resonance. "You see," Helena continued, her voice steady despite the reality storm raging around them, "we didn't spend our isolation learning how to fight. We spent it learning how to transcend the very concept of conflict. Every step of this war has been leading the swarm toward this moment, not so we could destroy them, but so they could understand what we understood centuries ago." The hive seemed to pause, its quantum distortions shifting from aggressive chaos to something more curious. Through the maelstrom of shifting reality, communication arrived, not in words or signals, but in pure conceptual understanding. "They're asking what we are," Serena translated, her ship's systems struggling to interpret the quantum language. Helena smiled, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. "We are what they could become, what all life could become." She stepped forward, raising her hand toward the tactical display. As she did, the human fleet began to change. Their ships ceased to be discrete entities, merging into a vast network of consciousness and energy that rivaled the hive itself. The transformed swarm vessels joined them, adding their unique quantum signatures to the growing symphony of unified existence. "Humanity never sought to conquer the galaxy," Helena explained as the transformation continued. "We sought to elevate it. The swarm's arrival wasn't a threat. It was an opportunity to demonstrate what conscious life can achieve when it moves beyond conflict and competition." The hive's response was unprecedented. Instead of attacking or retreating, it began to harmonize with the human consciousness network. The quantum storm calmed as two vast intelligences began to understand each other on a level that transcended ordinary communication. "This was your goal?" Serena asked, watching in awe as reality itself seemed to stabilize into new patterns around them. "Not victory, but synthesis." "Victory is temporary," Helena replied. "Understanding is eternal." The swarm sought to consume the galaxy to perfect itself. We showed them. And now that perfection isn't about consumption or dominance. It's about harmony, about recognizing that all consciousness, all life, is part of a greater whole. The battlefield had become something else entirely. Where once there had been fleets poised for war, there was now a vast network of integrated consciousness, human, swarm, and transformed ships, all existing in a state of quantum harmony that defied traditional physics. "The galaxy is entering a new age," Helena announced, not just to Serena, but to all who could receive the transmission. One where the boundaries between biology, technology, and consciousness itself become fluid. Humanity didn't hide away because we were afraid. We hid away because we needed to understand how to guide this transition. As if to emphasize her words, the human swarm network began to pulse with new energy, sending waves of quantum enlightenment washing across space. Ships, stations, even planets began to resonate with the new frequency of existence. "This isn't an ending," Helena concluded, watching as the galaxy began to transform around them. "This is an awakening. The real journey, the evolution of all conscious life towards something greater than the sum of its parts, is just beginning." Serena stood in silence, watching as reality itself was rewritten around them. Humanity had done more than win a war or save civilization. They had changed the very nature of existence itself. And somewhere in the quantum harmony that was reshaping the galaxy, the collective consciousness of humanity and the swarm pulsed with a shared understanding. The true power of evolution wasn't in becoming stronger or more advanced, but in becoming more connected, more aware, more alive. The dawn of a new era had arrived, and with it, the promise of possibilities that even humanity had yet to imagine.